when you want to speak, you're not necessarily looking for someone to actually give you answers. You just want someone to be able to hear you. I've been in the army. I'm in the fire service. I've been trained to be the strong one, the fighter. And here I am, feeling terrified like a kiddie. I could go to the nearest high street and find 100 people, all with a diagnosis of depression, all with a diagnosis of anxiety in one description or another, and ask them to describe how it's affected them. And no two stories will be identical.
Hello, my name's Charlie, the founder of LivedInsights, and welcome to the LivedInsights Podcast. We're going to be having conversations with many different people on many different topics to get their insights, their experiences, their knowledge, their wisdom to help other people. Please tell friends, tell family, tell colleagues, and without further ado, let's crack on with this episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the LivedInsights Podcast. This episode we're going to be discussing mental health, depression and anxiety. And my guest today is Andy. So welcome, Andy.
Hi, Charlie. Thank you for inviting me.
No
nice
problem.
To be here.
So I don't know, I've not met you before, I don't know much about you. But what I do know is that you have had experience of both depression and anxiety. So it'd be good to just go into a little bit more detail in terms of your experiences. And then also I'm aware that you, for the last 10 years now, have been a mental health first aider, helping people with mental health. So let's start with yourself and your experiences with depression and anxiety.
So my mental health issues, I have a diagnosis of PTSD, complex PTSD, along with associated mild to severe depression, which stems from my previous career as a firefighter in Greater Manchester. How
long were you a firefighter?
I was a firefighter for 29 years and 10 months.
Wow.
Didn't quite make my 30-year because I was sacked on capability due to my mental health issues 2 months before retirement.
Wow.
So yeah, a bit of a pain in the bum, but the fact is it actually forced me to make a change in my life, which has actually been a change for the better.
Okay, good. So you came out of the fire service, let's say that, and then were you aware at the time did you get a diagnosis at that time? Or
it was a long time to get the diagnosis. Okay. I started struggling with my mental health in the late 80s. So I joined the fire service in January of 87. And during that first couple of years as a young firefighter, I attended a number of fatal incidents. And that's what had the big impact on my mental health. And especially as at that time, there were no systems of support in place in the fire service for anyone that might be struggling. In fact, mental health issues weren't even acknowledged back then.
No.
Plus the fact that back home I had a lovely wife, but she couldn't cope with the fact that I was doing such a dangerous job. So I wasn't allowed to discuss my job back home. So I had.
And was there also an element of being a man? You didn't talk about things, that side of it as well?
I was brought up in a very, very male environment. My dad was a very old dad, born in 1920, an old soldier, very, very macho. I had 4 brothers as well.
Right, wow.
And following college, I actually did 3 years in the army. So I've done 3 years in the army, then went into another very male-dominated environment, the fire service. So all my entire life, I've been surrounded by
your
blokey
emotions,
blokes.
and mental health and anxiety, depression, etc. That just wasn't an option.
No, it wasn't. No.
Okay.
No. So it makes it really, really difficult when you've got no outlet. You know, nobody to when you want to speak, you're not necessarily looking for someone to actually give you answers. You just want someone to be able to hear you, and to not have that anywhere makes it really, really difficult for you to cope with what's going on inside your head.
And also, I thought there's an element of, because you don't hear of anyone else struggling in that sense, you just think it's just you.
Yes.
Without realising that loads of people are probably feeling very similar and going through similar difficulties. So we'll probably come on to that, because obviously in the last 10 years, 15 years, there's been a huge change with regard to mental health. But you're going back to the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and you're in a very difficult job, circumstances, seeing all these incidents. And did you recognise that it was having an effect on you? Were you aware of those issues?
I was aware of certain things, but I didn't understand the whys and wherefores.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the first things that happened was I started having nightmares.
Okay.
You know, and that was really difficult to deal with because I wanted to go to sleep and I couldn't sleep because as soon as I closed my eyes, I was having nightmares. So I started self-medicating with alcohol.
Right.
The only way I could get to sleep was to swallow copious amounts of alcohol to get to the point where I couldn't stay awake.
Okay.
So and to a degree, the alcohol masked a lot of the stuff that was going on, which made it even more difficult to actually understand what was going on.
And I guess at the time, that was your coping mechanism.
It was, yeah.
It's only in hindsight, looking back, probably, I'm assuming, you can tell me if I'm wrong, realising that wasn't the answer, that wasn't the right thing to do, that came with additional issues. And did that carry on for quite some time?
Yeah, it did for several years, and it's raised its ugly head a few times since. You know, when my children were born, I stopped drinking, and that was possibly the fact that they're these new human beings that I'd created along with their mum, obviously, and they really needed me.
Yeah,
so
that responsibility.
Yeah, that helped me stay off it for a while.
Okay.
But a few years down the road, the fact was that while I was trying to be normal for the kids, I wasn't being normal for my wife, and she could only take so much. And eventually, she decided she'd had enough, and that was it. Marriage over.
Okay.
You know, and when that happened, alcohol came back into my life. Yeah. You know, so it's a funny thing. So when you start drinking, initially it does actually feel like it's helping you, but when it goes on for a good while, you start to realise it's actually making me feel worse. Yeah.
Okay. And I think for many people, completely understandably, when they're going through a difficult time, a difficult period, for whatever it might be, they'll look for something to deal with that. Very often it is alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be something which isn't good for you, and then at some point they may realise this, manage to come off it, whatever the reason is for that, whether it's the motivation of your children or just, I've got to do this for myself. But then they'll come up against another of life's issues, another of curveball, something else, and then they default back to that, and then this cycle continues, and that's a very common pattern. I've seen it loads and loads, and it's very difficult to come out of that cycle. And I guess this is what we'll come on to later about having the knowledge, the education, the tools, the techniques to be able to say, no, there's other options much better that are going to work rather than going down
absolutely
the other one. So going back to yourself then, you talked about these difficulties, the nightmares, the alcohol, the marriage ending. What else was going on, or when did this, what was the next steps?
There's all sorts of things started happening, intrusive thoughts, so I'll be minding my own business, doing whatever I'm doing, and all of a sudden, I would have thoughts about the incidents that had happened, and then certain things started triggering panic attacks, and not just panic attacks, but also flashbacks. Right. So if a trigger was strong enough, it would literally be like, it would feel like being transported back in time to being in that situation again. But
and would it scare you? Would it make you angry? Would it make you
It created a whole host of emotions. There was the intense fear, but then there was a level of anger that came with it as well. But it was the fear first. It's like you're transported back to this place. But it wasn't just one place with my situation, because there were a number of incidents. I would be transported to a place where there was bits of a number of incidents all there all at the same time, and then as I started to come back to the here and now, I would start getting really, really angry with myself, because I've got this image that I am a weak human being. I should be. I'm
blaming yourself now.
Exactly. I've been in the army. I'm in the fire service. I've been trained to be the strong one, the fighter. And here I am, feeling terrified like a kiddie.
And was there an element of, was it 2 children you have? Or
yes.
You've got to be strong.
Yes.
You're the dad. And then having these emotions, these thoughts, kind of goes against that, and that vicious circle. And there was no one to talk to. You didn't understand it, and this carried on for many, many years, presumably.
Oh yeah, it continued for 11, 12 years until I became suicidal in the late 90s. And it was at that time that I went to see my GP, because along with the stuff that's going on in my head, there were physical symptoms as well. I was getting a lot of aches and pains and also skin issues and whatnot. So I went to see my GP about back pain that I was experiencing at that time. Really, really bad back pain. It was making it difficult for me to stand up, difficult for me to walk. So I went to see my GP, and he said, "Right, what's up?" And I opened my mouth to say, "I've got a bad back, doctor," and I just fell apart.
Okay, so it did come out that you were having all these other
issues. I couldn't speak. I was just crying my heart out, and
so you literally went in not expecting that at all. It came, and what was their reaction?
His reaction was amazing. He was a really, really good GP. And he allowed me that extra time to settle down, and then he started asking what's really going on. And thanks to him, I got into therapy for the first time, and that saved my life.
Yeah, that sounds like a massive, I don't know what best words to describe it, a massive point in your life to then go a different way. So you then went to therapy pretty much straight away?
It took a few months.
Right, because this is one of the issues with getting help, the time it takes.
It's a little bit better now, but back then, end of 90s, going into 2000, there weren't a lot of therapists around in especially in the area where I was living. There was no such thing as a waiting list for psychological services back then. But my GP worked really, really hard to find a therapist that would actually come to the surgery once a week to see me specifically. And that went on for about 5 months.
So again, please tell me if I'm wrong, but the way I would look at that is you talked about being suicidal in a really, really bad way. You went to the doctors, thankfully, and the fact that it came out and then they said, we can do something about this. Did those suicidal thoughts start to go? Did you feel an improvement straight away, or was it?
No, they stayed with me for quite some time. I still have days now when I wake up wishing I hadn't. So it's not something that literally just goes away. It's something that the therapy definitely helps. To know that there is someone there that can help you through those really, really difficult times really helps. But once once your brain has started functioning in that way, it's really, really difficult to just switch it off. You know, there's always that little voice in there. You know, when things start to go wrong in your life again, as ultimately they always do, because nobody's got a nice evil level playing through life, have they?
No,
there's ups and downs
life
for everybody.
It is a roller coaster. I mean, you just
Exactly.
often don't know where that bump, twist, whatever is going to come. But that was your first experience with therapy, and how long did that last for?
About 5 months. That course of therapy.
And this was back in the late 90s.
Yeah, I had my full-on breakdown with the GP in '99. 99 going into 2000 was when I started therapy for the first time.
Okay.
So going into the middle of the year 2000.
And did that help explain things? Did things start to make a bit more sense, a bit of clarity? Talk me through how that was beneficial.
It was beneficial in helping to normalise things for me. I use this example in my training quite a lot. Normalisation is something that we need to do a lot of with the world of mental health, because everybody feels like they're on their own. They are the only person ever. And in my first therapy session, again, I was blubbing, I was falling apart, I was,
But these were emotions that you hadn't let out for years and years and years.
Exactly. So, I'm calling myself all the names under the sun, being really negative towards myself. And my therapist, her name's Mary, and we're still friends now, even though we haven't seen each other for years. Okay. We send each other Christmas cards and everything, because she's just a brilliant human being. She said to me, she says, this is normal. And I said, what? This? You think this is normal? And she said, yeah. She says, you've been through an awful lot of crap.
It's normal for someone who's been through that.
Yeah, she says, you've been through an awful lot of crap, and anybody that's been through as much stuff as you've been through might well be reacting in the same way. This is your body's way of saying something's wrong. Please help me. And that was one of the most powerful things to this day that anyone has ever said to me.
Yeah. And if you look at it from a slightly different perspective, if you come across anybody who'd been through and seen what you'd seen and been through that, and they were all happy and jolly and didn't matter at all, you would think that was strange, because how could it not affect you?
No, I wouldn't actually, because not everybody reacts in the same way, and there are lots and lots of examples when people that have been through really traumatic incidents, whether they be in the emergency services, whether in the armed forces, or whether they're civilians that have been through some horrible stuff. There are lots of examples of people experiencing trauma and having no visible signs of it affecting them for several years. It can sit there bubbling away under the surface for a long time until something happens to bring it to the surface. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mary, you said therapist. Yeah. So you had that period of therapy, which helped in a lot of ways, but it wasn't a cure.
No.
So what was then the situation beyond that?
I decided to start going on some stress management courses. Constantly looking for things.
Was that suggested to you, or did you think that?
No, it's just something I wanted to do. I wanted to, because PTSD is an anxiety-based disorder. I wanted to learn more about anxiety, because it is linked not just to trauma but to stress in general, and it's also linked to lifestyles. So I decided I was going to go looking for information wherever I could find information about mental health, specifically to do with anxiety. So I started going on stress management courses, and I quite enjoyed them, and I found some really good things. So, for example, the effects of caffeine on your body. I didn't realise it was such a powerful stimulant, and it is a really powerful stimulant. So, and I thought to myself, as soon as I found that out, I thought, I drink 12 or 13 cups of tea and coffee a day.
Wow. Okay. That's going to have an effect.
That's going to have. So on top of the nightmares, I've got all this caffeine that's in my system, stopping me from sleep. Yeah. It's banging up my heart rate and my blood pressure as well, which creates hypertension, which isn't helpful when
increased cortisol levels and
exactly. Yeah. So the next thing for me was to come off caffeine completely. Okay. Which I did, and that was like a mini cold turkey thing. I felt poorly for a little while. Okay. Because I'm flushing out all of these stimulants.
So you went cold turkey with it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did you start to notice some benefits of that?
One thing that I noticed was that my energy levels across the day were more even.
Okay. I hope you're finding this episode interesting, informative and beneficial. And if so, please like, comment, subscribe, follow, and keep watching and listening to future episodes. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your colleagues. Also, if you can, go to the LivedInsights.com website and fill in an online questionnaire. You'll be helping so many other people understand more about these different topics and issues. So remember, tune in to Lived Insights, the conversation, and the website. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's interesting, because there's an example where you did something and you then fairly quickly had the evidence that this was something beneficial was happening. And I think that's really important for anybody to have the evidence that something's working. And often things take too long or don't take time, or you don't notice those benefits. So that's a really interesting one about something people might apply to them. And if they can do that, see the benefits, then wow, it's a massive tick, because you're not only having the benefit of not having the caffeine and all those things, it's the fact that this actually works. What's next? What else can you do? So that's an interesting one. What else did you do to help yourself?
Well, it's trying to find ways of keeping myself busy, because it's the quiet times when the intrusive thoughts start to pop into your head. So it was a real challenge, because in the fire service you really weird shift pattern. Right. Because you do 2 days, you do 2 nights, and then you have allegedly 4 days off.
Okay. Well, it's well known about any shift work will have an effect on
if you are a permanent day worker, your body adjusts to that. If you are a permanent night worker, your body adjusts to that. But when you're doing a mixture of shifts, days, nights, and then days off, it's really difficult for your body to adjust to that. And then it's like, so now, I've been on duty for 4 and a bit days, basically, when you add up all the hours, and now I've got 4 days to do with what? What am I going to do during those 4 days? And especially if if your other half is off going to work, and your kids are going to school, you're completely alone. So there's a big challenge there in trying to build a structure for yourself.
And filling that time constructively. All too easy to fill it with like nothing, and then the consequences of that, because humans need to be doing things, have a purpose, have fulfillment, and if you're not doing anything, or even worse, filling it with destructive things. So I think there is an issue. It needs to be more aware that shift work, there are health consequences to it, and I think people haven't ever really considered that until fairly recently.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were then in a period of the shift work, but did you go periods where you felt things were getting much better, or was it sort of up and down, or?
It was a case of a constant struggle to keep a lid on the anxiety, because let's say that going through therapy doesn't cure you. It gives you tools that you can use to manage what you're dealing with. But being constantly in that environment where my triggers were, so my triggers, blue lights, sirens, loud bangs. It's every time I experience, and it still happens today, that if I am faced with one of my triggers, I still get little panic attacks, little flashbacks and stuff. They're not as bad as they used to be, but they still happen. But back then, it was still big. It's still a major thing to try and deal with. So for a while, I saw an opportunity to actually come off the operational side of the job, and I went into community fire safety for a little while, for about 6 years, and that helped a lot. Being mostly away from the triggers.
And was that then? That wasn't shift work then.
No, that was day shifts.
Okay, so that had
that helped.
Helped, yeah. So things, were you conscious of things gradually improving?
Yeah.
Okay, and you were looking to do things that were going to help. So you were not only circumstances help the situation, but you were actively looking for constructive things that were going to help the situation.
So volunteering for charities and stuff like that. So things that I could do to fill those voids when I wasn't working. Things to do at the weekend. I took up golf.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is a brilliant way of spending 4 or 5 hours, even more if you're having a drink in the clubhouse afterwards with your mates. It's a great way to socialise. It's a great way to stay healthy.
And did you, during all this time, were you able to tell anyone else about your issues? It was
at work. It was still a challenge, right up to the day that I left the fire service. It was still a challenge. There was still people coming up to me and telling me that they thought I was talking a load of rubbish.
Right. Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They speak a little bit more bluntly in professions like the fire service, but it's really difficult. I experienced there were times when I experienced bullying as a result of being open about the fact that I was struggling with my mental health. Yeah. Both from guys at the sharp end that were at my level, but also from managers.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's I believe it's a bit better now, but it's still not.
I was about to say this was like 20 years ago, so you would expect.
Well, it's not 20 years ago. I left the service in October 2016.
Okay, so this period went all. So it was still basically not accepting it, taking the piss out of you, just. Don't be such a.
Not just me either. There were, by this time there were other colleagues that were openly admitting to the fact that they were struggling, and there were times when I witnessed those guys and girls receiving undue abuse.
Right.
From various quarters. Not everybody, because the large majority of people, whatever walk of life that you're in. The large majority of people are amazing people, amazing human beings.
Yeah.
But wherever you are, there's a small handful always that will turn on you.
Yeah. And ironically, quite often they're the ones with the biggest issues.
Yeah,
but
quite often,
they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're making up for their own insecurities a lot of the time.
Yeah. Okay. So you were doing things that were helping, you were being more productive, you're doing the golf, the charity work. been a bit more open about all this. So did you felt things were improving? You still had bad days?
Bit by bit, yeah. Things were improving.
Yeah.
And that was up until July 2013. And that was a bad day because we had I was back operational by then. I was back on the fire engines, and we had a big fire in Manchester city centre, and one of our lads died. And I was there at the time on that incident, and that just blew the lid off my illness again.
Okay.
Within a matter of a couple of days, I was unable to work. I was just as bad as I was back in 2000.
Right. Okay.
And I was off work for a few months.
Okay. Did the fire service offer counselling, support, help in that situation?
No.
Would they do that now?
I'm not so sure now, because obviously I'm not in the job anymore.
Right.
But allegedly by this time there were systems in place to help.
Right. Because from an outsider, not knowing the fire service, something like that, when a colleague dies, you're there in the midst of it, you'd think, of course, that's going to have a big effect, and therefore there'd be hopefully the right support in place, but there wasn't. So you went back downwards.
I was
quickly.
very ill. I was very ill, and so there was a lot of pressure on to try and get me back to come back to work, and I wasn't fit for work.
And did that? So you in that situation, you were at home. Were you having nightmares, panic attacks, drinking again, all of those?
Yes. The whole
Right.
kit and caboodle.
Okay.
I was as bad as I was back in
Right.
'99 when I went to see my GP.
Okay.
It was awful.
So you basically fallen back down into the pit, and now how are you going to get back out of that again?
Yeah, and to make it worse, like I say, allegedly the service was supposedly more supportive by this time, but I didn't see any of that.
Okay.
It was just a case of when you come back to work, when you're coming back to work, when you're coming back to work.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explain to senior managers, I need help. I have PTSD, and I wasn't believed.
Okay.
You know, I had appointments with the occupational health doctor and whatnot, and they believed me. You know, the medical professionals believed me, but management and HR didn't. So they sent me to see a psychiatrist to get a formal diagnosis.
Okay.
And that was in 2014, and their hope was that the psychiatrist would say there was nothing wrong with me and I would
get back to work tomorrow. Yeah.
But he didn't. He gave them full blown report saying this man has complex PTSD with associated mild to severe depression, which definitively has been caused by incidents attended as a firefighter.
Yeah.
Which of course put them in a very difficult position. The psychiatrist also advised certain treatments, certain therapies, and one of them being a thing called the EMDR therapy, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprogramming.
Okay.
And offered to actually put me on a program.
Okay.
But they decided to turn that down.
Right.
So I went searching for myself,
Yeah.
and I got myself onto an EMDR course through the NHS, and the occupational health doctor even said, give this therapy an opportunity to see if it's going to be of any benefit. But they said no, time's up.
Okay.
And that was me done.
Right. And what was your reaction to that? Did you just feel completely let down, or?
Well, it was a huge challenge, because but not just being let down, but betrayed.
Right.
Betrayed because the senior managers that were making the decisions I'd known for many years, So I felt absolutely betrayed, let down, angry.
Yeah.
And also...
None of which is going to be good for your mental health.
No,
it's only going to make things
exactly.
even
And
worse.
the other side of it is the confusion that it causes in you, because coming forward now, there's this massive change in my life. You know, for the best part of 30 years, I've been Andy the firefighter.
Yeah.
That's been pretty much
your identity.
Yeah, my identity. So now I'm facing this life without all of that, without all of my colleagues and, you know, comrades and whatnot. Left to fend for myself out in the big wide world. So who am I now? What am I now? How am I going to earn a living? How am I going to cope?
And you were at rock bottom.
Yes. So it was a really big challenge. Really big challenge.
So how did you
Well,
get through it?
One of the things that I'd done while on modified duties back in 2014 was I came across an advert for an armed forces mental health first aid course, which was fully funded. So having served in the armed forces before, I was able to access that course.
Okay.
So I went on that course, a 2-day course, and it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Loved it so much. So many great tools I can use to help myself, but help others as well.
Yeah.
I went straight back to the awarding body, who were at the time advertising that they were running instructor courses.
Because presumably those mental health first aid courses were fairly new back then, because they're not a, you know, well, certainly I'd never come across that until about maybe 12 years ago, you know, so they're fairly recent.
Yeah, well, you'd think so, but no.
They've been around a long time, have they?
They've been around longer than you think.
Okay.
So this was 2014, and it's the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah.
You know, I'd heard of first aid before.
Of course,
I was a qualified first aid instructor through the fire service.
Yeah.
But when I went on this mental health first aid course, I found that mental health first aid has been around since 2001.
Okay.
And it been started in Australia in 2001. That's where it was invented.
Yeah.
And in 2007, it came here to the UK.
Okay.
So by the time I went on a mental health first aid course, it had been around 7 years.
Okay. I think it must be sort of this exponential kind of
slow burn.
Yeah, because it's everywhere now, which is good. And you're going to obviously talk more about what you do. But as you went on this course, it was a bit of
an eye-opener. It was a real eye-opener, knowing, because there was lots of people on the course that, like me, had struggled, you know, and like me, wanted to find something to help themselves, but also to help others. And there's so many great conversations. And being an armed forces course, it was mostly guys as well. Right. There were a few girls on the course, you know, but it was mostly blokes.
Yeah.
And to be in an environment where there were men like me who had struggled with their mental health issue.
Yeah. And it was
openly talking about our individual experiences. You know, it that was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. And I can imagine what a change that must have been in terms of the environment, having never witnessed anything like that before, I imagine. So any time you've been able to openly discuss things is with a therapist, not with other like-minded, similar kind of people. So
it was absolutely great. So I went back. I applied to train as an instructor, which I did, and then in early 2015 I became qualified and approved to start delivering the training courses.
Okay.
And I was still on modified duty, still had a monthly wage coming in at that time. So I started delivering those courses free of charge to local armed forces charities.
Okay.
Which was a great thing for my own well-being to be able to do.
Yeah.
You know, all they had to pay for was the books. They didn't have to pay for my time, you know, or anything like that. And it was just,
so there was that.
Just felt so good to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, it was doing good, and the fact that it was a topic close to your heart, interesting, helping others, and that I think goes to the heart of a lot of what's so important with anybody is, I've mentioned it briefly before, the purpose and fulfillment. Having something that you feel is valid, is relevant, is making a difference.
Yeah. It's a reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
It's a reason to exist.
So since then, you've been delivering these.
Yeah. So in October 2016, I was officially my contract of employment was officially terminated.
Okay.
I was straight on then the journey of trying to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was my thought. I'm not a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in service all my adult life, so I was looking for a job, and I had a great CV. So I got lots of initial telephone interviews, lots of them. Mm-hmm. However, I never managed to get to the next stage.
Okay.
And whenever I asked for feedback, all I ever got was, "Oh, somebody did better than you, unfortunately." But I knew what the cause was. With every single interview, it got to the point where they asked a particular question, and that question was, "So why did you leave your last employment?"
Right. Okay.
And you have to be honest, because if you tell a lie and then you get the job and then you get found out that you've told a lie, you get sacked.
Yeah.
So I told them the truth.
Yeah.
So to me, it was a fact that nobody would want to employ a middle-aged man with severe mental health issues, and that's what I was. But then I thought I had an epiphany, if you like. One morning I thought, why am I doing this to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I doing this to myself? I've got skills.
Yeah.
I've been delivering these mental health first aid courses for nearly 2 years now. By this time, surely I could carve myself a career as being self-employed as a mental health first aid instructor.
Yeah. And
and I'm still doing it to this day.
Yeah.
And it still brings me a lot of joy. I still have times when I struggle, but when I've got a course to deliver, as I have tomorrow, I've got a refresher course online tomorrow.
Okay.
Joy. I'm going to wake up in the morning with a big smile on my face because I'm going to be sitting. This is an online course, but it's live, and I'm going to be sitting with mental health first aiders and helping them to bolster their knowledge and their skills so that they can go on for the next few years before the next refresher is due. And it's just a really lovely thing to be able to do.
No, that's fantastic. And I imagine you delivered hundreds and hundreds of courses to thousands of people. So
I reckon over the last 10 years, I've trained well over 1,000 mental health first aiders, and refreshed the knowledge of several hundred more.
Yeah, and you'll have no idea the impact of that. How many lives you may have saved, how many lives you've improved.
Well, that's one another beauty of it is I do. Okay. I do, because there are people that I know who never ever go on a course themselves, but regularly contact me and say, I know this person who's really struggling. And I've told them about you, and they've said, "Would you be up for a conversation? Would you be able to talk to them?" And so, I'm acting as a mental health first aider in that way, anyway. But with everybody that I train over the last 10 years, everyone's had the same promise for me. In that, I'm not a trainer who turns up, takes the money,
don't want to hear from you again,
and then exactly. I give everybody my personal contact details and say to them, if you need my support in the future, whether it be for your own well-being, or whether it be that you need a little bit of advice because there's someone you're helping, then just give me a call. Okay. And I regularly get calls for support, but I also get calls from mental health first aiders that are trained with me to say thank you for the training, because this week this has happened, and without having been on the course, I would not have known what to do. So it's really, really nice to have that feedback that what you're doing is having a good effect.
Yeah. And I guess it's probably only in recent years you've sort of been able to reflect and go, actually, for all the stuff that's happened, everything you've been through, the lowest points, all the stuff, actually, what I'm doing now, that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't have gone through those situations. And I think that's another thing that you want to get across to people is there's always positives in any negative situation. No matter how bad things seem, feel, the situation people find themselves in, there's hope. It sounds corny, but there is. Things can change, things can be turned around, and there's always, it's looking for that positive, looking for that where you can get to.
Yeah, but it's for me, when someone comes to me for a bit of support, I won't ever try and at that point say to them that good things can come from bad. It's because at that time it's really, really difficult for anyone, even me when I go through a challenging time, as I have done recently, to think to myself things will get better. It's about reassuring them that they will be all right at some point. We don't know quite when or quite how, but the important thing right now is to stick in there, and work at it.
Yeah, well, and that's the other big factor is you can't just expect things to happen to you. You've got to put that effort in. And I mean, we had a quick chat before the podcast, and you said what I was thinking around. There is no magic wand. There is no magic pill. There is no fairy tales of everything. It's just going to put a bit of sprinkle dust on it and it will be okay. It will take effort, time, application, all these things. But I know from my experiences, from your experiences, from the hundreds of people you've come across, that, if you do this, if you do that, if you stop doing this, if you change that, things will turn around, things will improve, things will get better, things will change. I think it's really interesting hearing about what you've been through, your journey, your story, particularly how you've now, for the last 10 years, been helping so many people through the mental health first aid courses. But for people watching, and there'll probably be two types of people watching, those that are going through their own issues right now, they're struggling, difficulties, etc. And then there's the people who are just interested, the people we want to watch these things to get a better understanding. They may be absolutely fine themselves at this moment, but they'll have partners, friends, family, colleagues who are struggling, but they don't understand it. They don't know what to do, how to help, etc. So trying to give them something to take away from this, it'd be good just to have a chat about that. So the people who might be watching who are struggling, and those that are watching just want to get a bit more understanding so they can perhaps support the people they care about more. So what would you say?
To people that are struggling, it's about gaining knowledge about your personal experiences. Speak to people that have been through similar. And I know from personal experience when you're struggling with a particular thing, whether it be anxiety, depression, if genuinely feels like you're the only person on the planet that's ever gone through this. So you can never find anyone that's gone through exactly the same as you. But if you speak to people that have gone through similar experiences and come out the other side, you can gain a huge amount of knowledge about what can help.
Yeah. Well, just on that point, because it's really interesting. It's just made me think about, in my situation, the biggest thing that made a difference, that catalyst moment, was reading a book by Marcus Trescothick, the cricketer. I'm not sure if you're aware of him.
I know the name, but I'm not a cricket fan. So
okay, so I'm a cricket fan, and this guy, Marcus Trescothick, was a top batsman, played for England, one of their best batsmen, and he kind of retired from international cricket and it was all a bit strange because they talked about a virus and stuff. But anyway, he brought out a book, his autobiography, and it was November 2008. Or rather, that's when I read it. I heard it on the radio. I had won a prize for the best sports book. And I wanted to read it because I was interested in cricket and him and his career. But he very, very openly talked about why he retired and his stress-related depression, and a lot of what he talked about, it really resonated with me, what I'd been through. And it was like a light bulb moment. It's like, whoa, this is very much similar to myself. And then he talked about, he recommended a book. I went and got that the next day, read that, and it was like, wow, things started to make sense. And so, that thinking that no one else could possibly understand, it was just me, what I'd been through, how I felt, couldn't talk to anyone. This was early 2000s, and it's similar to yourself in that it's just me, no one knows, no one to talk to. Reading that was like so powerful, and then it led me to read another book, then another book, then another book, and suddenly you're gaining all this knowledge, things are starting to make sense, and then you realise you have to accept that there's no magic wand, it's going to take time, but if you start doing these things and you start learning and you get that combination of this is helping, this does make sense, I'm understanding, keep building that knowledge, do the reading, do the research, huge difference. But that takes time and effort, and finding the things that resonate, the people, etc.
I could go to the nearest high street and find 100 people, all with a diagnosis of depression, all with a diagnosis of anxiety in one description or another, and ask them to describe how it's affected them. And no two stories will be identical. Because everybody experiences it slightly differently. There will be commonalities between their stories, but there will be differences as well. So when it comes to things that help, there is no one size fits all. But if you speak to a number of people that have gone through similar things to yourself, they will tell you that this has helped me. And this person will go, this helped me. So you can actually end up with a number of options then, and you've got something that you can have a go at.
Well,
and if it works, keep it. If it doesn't, throw it away.
Well, I've always called it a toolbox. And you personalise your toolbox, and you find out what works for you and what you need at any particular time, relevant, appropriate to the situation. And if the bigger the toolbox, you know what you can go to and get whatever it is, and you're used to it. You know what's in it. You can sort of close your eyes and you know where all those tools are.
But you've got a variety of things. There are people out there that just have the one thing. You know, we all know somebody who just likes to go for a run to de-stress. What do they do when they break the leg? If they haven't got anything else that they can make use of to help them rebalance their mental health, what do? They sit and they fester, and they become worse because they can't access the one thing that they love to do. I say my favourite thing to access to help my mental health is to go play golf, which I'll be doing twice this week, by the way, Thursday and Friday. I've been looking forward to that. But it's like during the COVID period, the government made it illegal for me to walk around that big field with a bag of sticks on my back, didn't they? You know, so it's a good time during that particularly stressful period, because I was really struggling. That I had other little things that I could help from here and there. You know, otherwise I would have struggled to come out the other side.
And I completely agree. Having a variety of options, and one thing won't be appropriate at a certain time. You might need a really quick change. And also the other thing that I use when I describe things is this spiral of decline. And the more aware you are of yourself and triggers and everything else, because the spiral of decline, it's very easy to start just gradually going down and down and down. The further down you go, obviously the harder it is to pull yourself up. But if you can recognise
early on,
as early as you can, if you're going down, then get that toolbox. Find something that's going to stop you going further down, and it's about management. And I mean, over the years, I've always said you don't cure depression, and depression is it covers so much. So this is talking about my depression that I had. It's always about being able to manage it and just being aware. And I've become so used to managing it and being aware and having those tools, the toolbox, different techniques, that I'm very aware if I'm going slightly down to very quickly bring it up. So it's almost like I can't go that much, I can't go down very far because I'm so aware of the situation that you stop and go back up as soon as possible. And I mean, for me, I've talked about this on other podcasts with the cancer diagnosis and all the stuff around that. That was a huge test, and I applied so much of the tools, the techniques using that to deal with it. And it was because of the depression, because of the toolbox, because of what I'd learned from the mental health issues of the past, that helped so much. And that's another thing that I suspect you agree with is, you can't change the past. You can, whatever you've gone through, but you can learn to understand it, deal with it, and then build the positives, build the stuff that's going to help you going forward. And if you can also help others like you're doing, even better. And there's something in what you get out of being able to help other people that is naturally going to help with your mental health anyway. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, we touched upon this before we recorded, that there's a lot of talk, a lot of awareness, a lot of discussions around mental health. It's always in the news. It's getting worse statistically. We've never had as much knowledge as we have now. We've never had as much expertise. And well, there's a lot of stuff out there.
There's a lot of really good information out there, but there's also an awful lot of really bad information out there as well.
And confusing information.
And so to come back to the other half of the question, is what would you say to people who would like to help? Is find some way of educating yourself on with good information about mental health issues. There are lots of ways. Obviously, you could go on a mental health first aid course. There are lots of people like me out there delivering courses all over the country. And that, for me, is the gold standard. Get out there and actually do a face-to-face course with other human beings, sharing personal experiences is absolutely brilliant. Or failing that, get on an online course. Check out websites like the NHS, like Mind and whatnot. There's so much great information. But the other really important thing for me to say to people that are watching and maybe would like to support people better is try not to fix things. Coming back to we as people that have struggled know that there's no magic wand. They need to understand there's no magic wand at all as well. And the best thing that anyone could ever do to support someone when they are struggling is just be there to listen.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I mean, I think particularly males, I'm generalising, you have to be careful.
Dangerous.
Very dangerous. But our instinct is very often, what's the solution? We want to fix things. And again, generalisation, women are so much better at just listening, at just being there. And I think that's something people need to recognise. But also at the same time, you do have to then do things. So there's that balance between being supportive, just being there, but then try this, try that, help.
That's why I say is always, when you become a mental health first aider, it's about helping someone see that they've got options. When we have a conversation with our mates down the pub and they've got a bit of a problem with whatever, we tend to say things, you know what, if I were you, I would do this. You know, and that's fine in that general sort of live situation. But when it comes to supporting someone with their mental health, we can't do that. That's because it's not us, it's them. You know, the way they see things is different to the way that we see things, because we've all got a completely different window on the world. What seems like a fabulous option to us will seem like a horrendous thing to them, maybe. So it's about saying, you know, well, you know, I know there have been lots of people that have been through similar situations to yours. For this person, this sort of thing was great. For this person, this sort of thing was great. You know, and let them see that there's more than one way to get support. You know, and give them information about what's involved in those different options, so that they can make an informed choice about which way they want to go with it.
Yeah, that's really important. Well, I think when it comes to the mental health first aid, there's a lot happening in that space, a lot of options, a lot of courses, obviously what you run, but it's still only just touching the surface in terms of what potential there is. So for anybody watching and they're interested in it, or if they work for a company, you know, find out, you know, could you become a mental health first aider, get on a course, etc. And what's the name of your company?
My business is called MHFA Training UK. Okay. So as MHFA as in Mental Health First Aid Training UK. To reflect that, I literally go all over the UK delivering this. In come the summer, I'll be in Jersey delivering
Nice.
an armed forces version of the course.
Fantastic.
So it's great. So, but you don't have to, if they don't like the look or the sound of me, that's absolutely fine, because we're not all right for everybody, are we? You know, they could just go to there are different awarding bodies, but the biggest awarding body in this country is MHFA England. You can go to their website and you'll find all the courses listed. All my courses are listed on there. All the courses by all the other instructors that MHFA England have trained are on their website. So you could just, oh look, they're in the Midlands. I'll make use of those if that's what you want to do. Yeah,
fantastic. Well, whether it's checking out Andy's company or other mental health first aid courses, or looking, we talked about doing your own research, reading, education, etc. And obviously share this video to friends and family. So thank you so much, Andy. Really appreciate sharing your insights, your experience, and what you're doing. Fantastic. So well done.
You're welcome, Charles. Thank you for having me. It's brilliant.
It's good to meet you. So thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed that episode, and please check out all the other episodes up on the YouTube and Spotify channel.